Jeremy Scahill on the line with us. He's, by the way, speaking tonight at the Holland, Michigan 7 Theater at 7:30. That's at 500 Waverly Road, Holland. I say this especially for our listeners who are listening on WTKG in Grand Rapids, which can be heard in Holland, Michigan. It's sponsored by the Interfaith Congregation of Holland, and rebelreports.com is Jeremy's website, although he has a new blog over at thenation.com on this topic. Jeremy Scahill, welcome to the program.
Good to be with you, Thom.
Great to have you with us again. You came across a tape of Erik Prince in a rare private, the tape is rare. I guess his private speaking is not so rare, in which he, well, actually, instead of my giving the backstory, you give us the backstory on this. Where did this thing come from?
Sure. Well, actually, Erik Prince does not give that many lectures, either in public or private. In fact, he's, as I speak to you right now, he's giving a lecture here in Holland, Michigan, inside of the DeVos Field House, which is owned by his brother-in-law's family, the DeVos family, the owners of the Orlando Magic basketball team, and the biggest bankrollers of the radical religious right revolution in this country.
And particularly in the state of Michigan, by the way.
And particularly in the state of Michigan.
Dick DeVos was running for governor,
You're darn right. In fact, Dick DeVos wants to be governor. He's the heir to the family fortune, and these are power players. So as I speak to you now, the mercenary kingpin is down the block from me speaking at this field house. But he has, Thom, made a rule that no recording devices can be at the speech. He tried to ban journalists from being in there, and that didn't work. And then he tried to say, well, journalists can come, but they can't report on it. And then there was protests from the Associated Press and the journalism associations here in Michigan. And eventually he agreed to allow reporters to be there and report on it, but they aren't allowed to bring in any tape recorders or video recorders at all. And so that makes it all the more rare that what I was able to obtain was an hour-and-a-half recording of Erik Prince giving a lecture to the Young Presidents Organization, which is sort of an elite entrepreneur organization that Steve Forbes and others have been affiliated with. And he gave this lecture in January of this year. And what he said, Thom, during this lecture was clearly not intended for public consumption, because he spoke about his suggestion that the United States send mercenary forces right now into Somalia, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, which is ostensibly a U.S. ally, as well as the oil-rich nation of Nigeria. And in the case of the Middle Eastern countries, the Arab countries, he said that we need to do this to combat Iranian influence. And he said that the Iranians are at the dead center of badness in the world. He also spoke disparagingly.
Now, let me just interrupt you here, Jeremy Scahill. This is a guy who, if we follow his instructions and we really believe that all these evil people are as evil as he says they are, and we have to therefore go after them militarily with a mercenary force, this is the guy who will make hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars from our doing that. Do I have that right?
Well, I mean, his company certainly could stand to profit from that. But, one of the things that I think separates Erik Prince from a lot of people in the mercenary business is he's also an ideological believer. In fact, Thom, of course he's made a tremendous amount of money off of the killing and the killing industry, the mercenary industry. But he also has funded operations, particularly under the Bush administration, on his own, giving the government ultimate plausible deniability. So I do think that part of it's a profit motive, but this guy's also a true believer, and
which makes it even scarier. I think here's one of the quotes. I just want to reality check this with you, Jeremy Scahill. He was asked about the Geneva Convention. Aren't people entitled to rights under the Geneva Convention? And he said, "quote Absolutely not, because these people, they crawled out of the sewer. They have a 1200 AD mentality. They're barbarians. They don't know where Geneva is, let alone that there was a convention there." End quote. Is that accurate?
Well, no, it's not accurate, first of all.
No, I mean, is that an accurate quote of Erik Prince?
Oh, that's exactly what he said, absolutely. And in fact, what's interesting about that is that Prince erroneously uses the term convention as though it was just a meeting rather than an international agreement
treaty
that governs rules of law of war.
Well, it's also the law of the United States. Our Constitution says if we sign a treaty, it becomes the law of the land.
Right, and he's basically saying the actual question that he was asking himself was, what about your forces being unlawful combatants and therefore not entitled to protection under the Geneva Convention? And he basically just said, screw the Geneva Convention, we're fighting barbarians that crawled out of the sewer. And he was referring to people that were fighting against the U.S. occupation in Iraq and Afghanistan, and also those that they're fighting in Pakistan, which Blackwater has denied they're operating in, and Prince confirmed in the speech that they do operate in Pakistan.
Now, that's big news for the Pakistanis.
It is. I mean, and in fact, it started to get some play there. I mean, I think the Pakistanis right now are dealing a lot with the situation of Faisal Shahzad, the naturalized American that was arrested in this alleged attempted car bombing in Times Square. So this story hasn't really hit big there yet, but it certainly is starting to make its way around the Pakistani press, because the Interior Minister of Pakistan said he would resign if anyone could produce definitive evidence that Blackwater was in his country. So this, I would think that Prince saying it himself is definitive evidence.
Yeah, having the founder and the president of the company, this is amazing. Blackwater called up NATO airstrikes. Do I have that right? A private corporation is calling up NATO airstrikes. We have just a minute left, by the way, Jeremy.
Yeah. That's what Prince said, and that's what I've been getting calls from congressional offices and military people about. Prince alleges that his forces, a 200-person strike team that does counter-narcotics work in Afghanistan, called in NATO airstrikes on a hashish production and heroin production operation in Afghanistan, and that the bombings then took place and they blew the place up, and Prince chided NATO for taking responsibility for strikes that his forces were responsible for calling in. I mean, it's a very, very serious question of military chain of command.
Right. We've got a private corporation now telling the combined militaries of a whole bunch of different countries what they should do and how they should do it. This smacks to me of so trans-constitutional, so illegal. It blows my mind. Jeremy Scahill, he's speaking tonight. If you're listening on WTKG in Grand Rapids at 7:30 at the Holland 7 Theater, that's on Waverly Road in Holland, Michigan, and sponsored by the Interfaith Congregation of Holland. There's going to be some fireworks. Erik Prince, not literally, hopefully. Erik Prince speaking just down the road. Jeremy Scahill, thenation.com. Thanks so much for being with us, Jeremy.